if you're in a fund and you're literally invested in hundreds of businesses, then that's less than him buying individual businesses. But I do think it's fascinating that oftentimes the opposite of good advice is more good advice. And like, so good advice, you should diversify. Good advice, you should focus.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Business Lunch. Technically, it's business post-lunch because Ryan and I just literally had lunch together.
Had lunch.
Somehow we have had lunch and are both staying awake and long enough after to have a Business Lunch podcast. So anyway, welcome to the show. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing really great. We didn't have any wine or anything at lunch, and that's probably a good thing.
5 bottles open, as you know, that are sitting in the cold room, and they are from our Bordeaux tasting, and I think that they should probably be approached after our meeting today.
Oh, we're gonna drink the crap out of it. Yeah, that's happening. But first, we got to give the people what they want, which is amazing insights, ideas, and stuff that's gonna make their business be just insanely successful. So, what's on the docket for today?
I was thinking that we would talk. Did you see that Warren Buffett released his latest shareholders letter?
I didn't. He did. Which normally I actually do try to make a point of reading his shareholder. At least I start. Like everybody's like, oh, I read all when they come out. I definitely start reading most of them, but they're fairly long.
They are.
So I don't know that I've made it all the way through any of them, but I typically at least make an attempt at reading it. What do you have to say?
Well, I think interesting. The big highlight, I think, was that his the Berkshire portfolio since 1965, when he came in, was up 4,400,000% compared to 31,000% for the Standard & Poor's. So the S&P not doing terrible, over that period of time, but obviously he's doing significantly better. I forget the math in it. I think it said it was 251 times better, but I could be wrong. But you guys can do that math yourself. But it was pretty amazing. And I know you and I were talking not long ago about his saying on diversification, which I think you have memorized. You want to share that with folks?
It's diversification is a protection against ignorance. It makes little sense if you know what you're doing, is what he said. Diversification is a protection against ignorance. It makes little...
Which is interesting.
I think it's smart.
It's interesting for him to say, though, because he owns an insurance company, a soft drink company, a candy company, a furniture warehouse,
insurance company,
companies. I mean, it feels like he is actually pretty diverse. So I'm not sure if he's like, did he say that when he owned just the insurance company?
I think he's basically talking about why, if you know what you're doing, you should invest in individual companies as opposed to a fund. But I still think it's in. So obviously we're talking about something that's very relative, right? I mean, so diversify. If you're in a fund and you're literally invested in hundreds of businesses, then that's less than him buying individual businesses. But I do think it's fascinating that oftentimes the opposite of good advice is more good advice. And like, so good advice, you should diversify. Good advice, you should focus. Like those are both good advice. I think it's worth when is it right to focus and when is it right to diversify? What do you think?
I've had that same challenge with cliches because it's look before you leap, but he who hesitates is lost. I mean, there's like, but it's hard. So let's talk about it. So, and on the other side, our buddy that owns LVMH that founded that, at least you said,
our dear friend.
You said you recently, now that we've shared an airport suite together, I feel like we go way back. But you read something, I think that there was a little challenge in LVMH land.
Yeah, so at LVMH, if you don't know, it's one of the more valuable companies in the world, and they basically Bernard Arnault rolled up pretty much every major luxury brand that you've ever heard of. So Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, just a few of them. I mean, what are some of the other big LVMH brands? Obviously,
Luxottica owns every single basically luxury eyeglass company in that you can think of. Cheval Blanc, obviously, for the hotels and the wine, which is pretty good. And then I believe that they own Fenty Beauty, which is with Riri, who we all love. But a lot of, quite a few. It might even be, is it Christian Dior? There's another fashion house that
Yeah.
they've got as well.
But yeah, he's basically like, so LVMH has been struggling a little bit on the market, and the idea is, like, what I was reading is he's kind of getting assessed with the conglomerate tax. And
Mhm.
so while CEOs really love, and entrepreneurs very often, we really love the idea of roll-ups and holding companies. We love the diversification that it brings. How you can have some that are a bit, maybe even counter-cyclical, although pretty much all luxury, so not really counter-cyclical. But Wall Street's essentially, not Wall Street necessarily, but I mean, investors are basically saying, like, hey, the reality is when you own this many companies, you're not focused on any one of them. So we're kind of going to assess you a little bit of a conglomerate tax here. We'd much rather see CEOs that are focused on just building the one brand. And so there's talks about how he may have to even start selling off some of these brands. So it is this constant tension between, should we diversify? Should we roll out more products, or should we focus on the ones we have? Should we look to do M&A and grow that way, or should we just focus on what we have? And I just think it's equally good advice, depending on the time, that yes, you should focus, and yes, you should diversify. Because like right now, he looked like a genius for rolling up all these things, but now they're saying, maybe it's not as smart. So who's right? I think the thing is, it depends. It depends on timing, depends on where you are in your entrepreneurial journey. It depends.
That's super helpful to people, I think.
Right? Let's just
So
leave it
either
there.
diversify or don't diversify.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that it depends, and you're welcome for that
Yeah.
advice. Okay, well, how do we reconcile these things and come into some sort of helpful conclusions, do you think?
I think early on, when you're first getting started, focus is the answer. And I do see far too many entrepreneurs, and I'm guilty of this as well, trying to launch multiple businesses at the same time. And I think when you're in startup mode, trying to start multiple businesses at the same time is not a great idea. And people will talk about, but Elon Musk, he's the CEO of Tesla, but also SpaceX, but also, it's like, yeah, but those weren't necessarily all started at the exact same time. They were funded. They had good teams. They've got operators,
And
running them.
he's alone in his ability to have done that, right?
Yeah, and also you ain't Elon.
Right.
So like, let's just set all
And
that
no,
aside.
so far in history that I know of, nobody else is either, right?
Right. So I think if you're running a company, if you're operating a business, then yeah, you do want focus. But I also think that there comes a time when you've got to shift from, okay, I'm the inventor and I'm focused on this one particular product, solving, having one product that solves one big problem for one person, right? One product, one problem, one person. Like, that's kind of the, in the beginning, I think that's everything. And then what do we start to do? Well, now our focus shifts to focus on building the company. So we shift from, a focused inventor to a focused builder. But I think at some point, if you want to scale, you've got to start thinking less like an inventor, less like a builder, and more like a capital allocator. And I think every great capital allocator is going to have some aspect of diversification. I mean, that's just going to be a tool that they've got to play. So I do think it's a timing, and I do think you're also going to waffle back and forth in your career for when it's appropriate to focus a bit more, when you gotta diversify. I think anytime though you find yourself wanting to diversify, there better be somebody around who's focusing. Because if everybody is in diversification mode and nobody's focusing on the individual, that's when I think it becomes a problem, especially for smaller businesses.
I don't know what the structure of LVMH is, but one thing that I will say towards Buffett is that his investments are generally based around the CEO and the operating team. And he's very, very hands off. I think they have 26 people in Omaha that, despite I think it's hundreds of thousands of employees, that I think it's 400,000 employees, some large number that all of his companies and major investments have. He has 26 employees. He is not diversified in how he goes about identifying the investments to pursue. He is not diversified in that he's going to hold on to cash. I think they have 186 billion now, more than the market value of Uber and Airbnb, in cash, just sitting on the sidelines because they haven't found a place to deploy it, and they're in bonds. And the companies that he's got are, in fact, fairly focused. If you look at each of them, like the Omaha Furniture Company sells furniture. See's Candies sells candy. It doesn't sell toothbrushes and dental care and other things that might be indirectly related to it. And so across the board, I think that he is an investor and he's investing in companies, and they haven't diversified. So there's not Buffett hamburger sauce, right? There's just basically Berkshire that invests in companies using a singular method or thesis to find the companies that they have. And then the companies themselves are not forced to become part of the conglomerate and buy each other's services. They are happy, they're free to do what they want to do. I don't know if LVMH is like that. If it is more conglomeratized, then it might suffer from some of that. Although, given the fact that he's consistently, number 1 or 2 richest man in the world, I got to think that he's doing okay, despite what the media says. So it'll be interesting to see. And it might be worth us diving a little bit into the structure of that company to see how, and you guys that are out there too, love to hear from you if you know. But that would be something that would is it a conglomerate so that it's just a pressing together of a bunch of unrelated things, like the old, I think it was it GE under Harold Janine was like that, GE Capital and all that stuff. They just bought all kinds of completely unrelated companies and had hundreds of them.